Glasgow doubted whether they did.
The trouble with staff in relation to claims is that they look on a claim as something of a minor nature, and they don't realise that at the end of the day, this can cause a vast sum of money being paid by the BRB in relation to these claims. I feel that meetings should be held to put the whole position before the staff in order that they would realise that at the end of the day, a hell of a sum of money could be saved. This, in turn, would give the trade unions the opportunity to argue an increase of wages more strongly than in the past.
As a claims officer, I am vitally aware that the main commodity we have to sell is the service we provide to the public. It is true to say that every claim we receive is in fact a vote of no confidence in this service we provide.
Damage to a consignment very often can be met by payment of the claim. But the real damage is when it affects the trader's business, either by the fact of the damaged article holding up production, or alternatively, when perhaps a consignment by some means or other is delayed and does not reach the port in time to be shipped. Thereby, the trader maybe loses a customer. British Railways, of course, plays a large part in our economy, and as such, if we lose business of this nature, it can seriously affect our carryings as well as the economy of the country.
If the situation regarding delivery by British Railways became so bad that the mail order companies in this part of the world had no alternative but to close down, which I hope will never happen, it would result in the cotton towns having a depression again equivalent to the old cotton days.
A number of plans and policies are brought out from time to time to save money. Reduction in documentation, reduction in police supervision, reduced protection to goods on cartage vehicles. All these admittedly save money in the long run, but at the same time they must increase the number of claims for damage and for loss. When this happens, obviously the prestige of our transport organisation is diminished.
On the other hand, an agent of a large depot had good reasons to welcome the economy drive, which reduced the number of his wagons.
Before the number of vans was reduced, we found that some vans were being sent to remote places, loaded with only a few packages. Not only was this uneconomic, but it allowed the packages to move about the floor of the van, and more damage was caused than would have been by tight packing.
Only men who are warmly interested in their jobs and in the future of the railways take the trouble to criticise, to suggest improvements and to give credit where it is due. According to so many of them who talked, the bad old days are fast disappearing.
Well, I think the difference is so astounding that one can hardly believe what has really happened. Prior to the war, our men on the cartage side, they worked 12 hours a day, I would say the greater majority of them, and naturally, at the end of that particular time, which was getting in the region of 8 or 9 o'clock at night, they, instead of going home, they would go across to the local public house near the station after they'd put their vehicles away. And I'm rather inclined to think that quite a lot of them probably wouldn't reach home until 11 o'clock or later. Consequent upon that, there would be domestic disruption. One could appreciate that. Now, coming up to the present time, say the last 6 or 7 years, men are now booking on at 8 o'clock and are finishing in the region of 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Well, they're able to get a bus home much quicker than they would later in the evening because they're before the rush period. They're able to go home, they can change, get out of their dirty working clothes, get into something more presentable. I think the main point is that they see their children now more than they ever did before, and that's something where a chap who's working all day because the children are in bed naturally and they get home late at night.
In these new circumstances, what is being done by the man on the job to keep down claims? Foremost is the driver who has to take his load across big and crooked towns. One of BR's biggest customers tells how one driver was stopped in broad daylight by a car containing 4 policemen and an Alsatian.
Now, this driver had instructions that he was not to leave his cab under any circumstances. And he told the policeman that he couldn't get out of his cab because he'd been told not to. And they told him very quickly, well, let us put somebody else in the cab with you. And he said, you can't do that because the other door is welded and locked, and I can't get out to let you in. He told the police to follow him, and they did for 15 miles. It wasn't until he got to the end of his journey and was able to get to a telephone that, of course, we were able to confirm that they were bogus policemen. And here's an example of a man sticking to a simple, basic rule and saving £40,000.
Another driver, loading tobacco from a London warehouse, smelt a rat immediately when he got a phone message to pick up some other stuff 3 turnings away.
Then I secured the load in the yard and went to their inquiry office to phone St Pancras on account that it didn't seem right for me, with a load of tobacco, and getting dusk at night, to travel round the streets to pick up other stuff. When I did get onto the telephone, they knew nothing whatsoever about it. Well, of course, then, being late at night, there was no other alternative but to take the main road home, keeping as much as possible in with traffic so that there's someone round or near should anything ever happen.
Among those most anxious to help the driver to get the goods safely to the customer are the manufacturers themselves.
One of the ways we help drivers is to fit vans with immobilizers and alarms. Some of the drivers have thought that having an alarm on a vehicle would add to their danger. In one instance, the drivers were so adamant about not having an alarm that the only way to overcome it, they decided, was for me to give a talk to the men on the question of alarms and thieves. And once they saw the logic of what we were after, they gave us full-hearted support and are now so keen that they won't take a load out without one of these alarms on.
According to a railwayman working in a Manchester depot, there was a far easier way of keeping villains' thieving fingers away from tobacco and spirits.
It's my own personal view that in these enlightened times, all this type of traffic should be under plain cover. I've no doubts in my mind that if firms would desist from this particular form of advertising, it would reduce claims being paid out by the BRB by virtue of the fact it would not be as noticeable to those people who intend to get their fingers into it and pilfer it.
One of this country's biggest tobacco traders was asked why he didn't forward his goods in plain cartons.
We don't do that. We print bold advertisements for our brands because we feel that if we forwarded them in plain cartons, the villains would rapidly find out that we were doing so and would recognize the cartons. And secondly, once a carton has done a journey, we don't reuse it. They're sold and are used over and over again. In other words, we have a continuing advertisement for our brands until that box is ultimately destroyed.
In any case, the average claimsman has his doubts about any device to foil the professional thief. Putting goods into bags to hide their value works well enough, but for how long?
The operation of the bagging schemes have succeeded in reducing claims considerably, and there is, of course, the possibility that thieves will get to know what the bags contain, and then we shall have to take steps to introduce some other medium for securing the traffic.
We find from experience that using open-top cartons which exposes the goods, especially jams, soaps or pickles or anything like that, we find that there's less liable to pilferage and less liable to damage, as the people know what's in the carton and they take care of it.
Methods have improved everywhere, not least in the claims section itself. How often in the old days could a claims officer be heard complaining,
I feel that it is unfair to suggest that the claims office is an instrument entirely devoted to fobbing off claims from legitimate damages and losses and so forth.
and the trader would answer back,
British Railways claims section seem to lean forward to see they do not pay anything out at all. And as far as the customers are concerned, I have the feeling they don't matter, not in the slightest.
In the old days, the claims people saw complaint after complaint and became rather frustrated, imagining that this was the picture of railway operations as a whole. Today, the claims section is quite properly placed within the marketing and sales organization. Every morning, a conference is held at which all the principal officers are in attendance. The charges officer, the market research officer, the public relations and publicity officer, and the claims officer. This enables all the principal officers to obtain a complete picture of railway activities. Therefore, the claims officer is not left out in the cold.
If any particular trader notes from his claims that he is getting recurring losses or damages to particular points or particular types of traffic, he then either writes or telephones to the claims prevention section and asks for assistance, which is immediately provided. On the other hand, we also keep a record of claims paid to the large trader, and where these recur in any number, we approach the trader with a view to looking at his traffic, finding how he packs it, how he labels it, is he having any particular problems of destinations, particular customers, and usually the problem is surmounted.
It's surprising that many traders don't know of the existence of the Central Claims and Packaging Organisation, but here we can help traders in many, many ways. Specimen packages can be submitted and then a full examination of the case takes place. The strength of the case is examined and several tests including crushing strength, bursting strength, drop tests and compression are made on the case and its contents. If we find that this stands up to the rigorous examination, then the railways will issue a certificate of approval, which means that the traffic can be conveyed at the board's risk.
This case has 017 craft facings and a Mullen test of over 250 pounds per square inch. It has a double wall liner of 014 chip material with a set of divisions 014 and double face material. The bottles are 10 3/8 tall, which makes them shorter than divisions, and therefore the case is suitable for certification.
In the end, from talking to so many people in so much detail, what were the points on which there was most agreement?
The key to running a freight terminal is good first-line supervision. Claims prevention is not a thing apart. It is part of the duty of every supervisor to see that goods are properly packed, that they're not pilfered, and that they travel properly from point to point.
But whatever we do in providing expensive packaging, it is essential that we should get the traffic through to its destination promptly and give the customers a next day delivery.
It has been proved time and time again that when a consignment is stationary, it is vulnerable.
I do feel that one of the important things is speed of transit with safe transit, because nothing acts more against the railways than to have consignment arriving at destination in bad order or alternatively delayed and thereby them losing a customer.
And in my view, the only way in which this pilferage can be cut down is to ensure that the parcel only stands still for the minimum time.
There is no single answer to this problem. As Chief Constable of the Transport Police, I suppose I see the problem in all its aspects. Everybody has a part to play to see that goods are properly packed, fully addressed, that at every point of the transit they are efficiently handled. But I have no doubt that the best answer to this problem of the security of merchandise in transit is to keep the merchandise on the move. Merchandise on the move is reasonably safe.
With so many people talking on such a variety of topics and with such a variety of attitudes, no one point of view could prevail. All the same, in depots all over the country, there was a vivid understanding of how deeply British Railways' reputation and finances are affected by loss, theft and damage. This grasp of the problem by the men doing the job is in itself a promise that the situation, serious as it is, can be mended.